unpack. We unpack. We unpack. Coming to you live. Boxingego unpack. Yeah. We unpack. We unpack. We unpack. Coming to you live. And we are back. What up, Fight World? It's your boy Ego, and I'm back with some more Boxingego Weight Watchers, aka Ew. Now, I am back to complete the trilogy. Enough of you guys watch part 1 and 2 of this Spence Crawford special edition Ego Weight Watchers, aka Ew, where I give you a look into the fighter lifestyle before, after, and progress picks, especially when they have an upcoming fight. This Saturday, July 29th, hey, stop that cap. Man down, Errol Spence versus Terence Crawford. Now, you guys seen the video I put together, the slideshow at the beginning of this video, and that was Terence Crawford. He looks ghastly, he looks ghoulish, and to me, it looks like there's some type of weight drain or complications or just a very tough weight cut. You see Terence Crawford at the press tour. He looked bulked up, as you see on this green screen where they did the promotion for Spence Crawford, and it looked like the goal was to bulk him up and bulk him out, and he looked bigger than I recall seeing, which I think is part of Crawford's problem here, because this is an old video I shot in Crawford's gym, and that's kind of how his frame normally looks. But for me, this was the biggest that I personally can recall Crawford looking just before a fight. So I made the part 1 and part 2 of the video. Part 1, I really dissected why I felt that Terence Crawford's weight cut, you know, it looks like there's some complications, like the weight cut is whooping his ass. There was some pushback. A lot of people understood it. A lot of people listened, got it, but there was some pushback, and they said, oh, talk about Errol. So in part 2, I talked about Errol, and I explained why I wasn't really worried about Errol Spence's weight cut, because the baseline is he's a bigger welterweight. So we know, you know, he does a cut, and I've seen him cut from bigger weights, his starting point, right? But for more details, you check out part 1 and part 2 of those videos. Now back to Crawford. Again, this is Crawford at the press tour. He looked bigger than I'd ever seen him or can recall seeing before a fight. That was Errol Spence. So again, Errol Spence had long negotiations with Crawford, and he knew that this was the only fight he wanted. He agreed to some of Crawford, or I guess all of Crawford's demands, to make Crawford feel comfortable, and it looked like he was maintaining his weight up until that point. Crawford, on the other hand, definitely looked bigger than I'd ever seen him before. So I found that strange. I definitely found that to be strange that Terence Crawford, the guy who had moved up, because he always talks about it. Oh, I moved up. I was undisputed at 140. I came up from 35. You've been at welterweight. So when I seen the grand arrivals, it was pretty shocking to me that it appeared that Terence Crawford was the guy who was almost having more complications with his weight cut as opposed to the bigger guy, which is definitely Errol Spence Jr., who's been in or around this weight class since the Olympics, right? So I'm wondering, why is Errol Spence weight cut look like he's arriving that? And I talked about this in part 2. He got a nutritionist and somebody to cook his meals, take that off the plate. I don't really know who cooks Crawford's meals. It could be Bomac, because I definitely seen on one of those all access blood, sweat, and tears type of shows, they showed Terence Crawford and Bomac was on the grill and he was making food for the team. And he was like, come and eat, guys. So I thought it was very weird for Crawford's team to start him at such a high weight. And when you compare how Crawford looks at the press tour with all this added muscle and added muscle mass and weight to how he looked at the beginning, it looked completely different. You know, his hair looks patchy. He looks kind of raggedy and like hobo-ish. He looks, you know, I understand being in the trenches and fighters, they get the grizzly look because it's like almost like no shave November. They're not worried about going to the barber and things like that. I get that. You know, you just want to keep that edge to you. But the way Crawford's face is looking sucked in and concaved, that's a far cry from what you're seeing in this particular picture, which released like not too long before the actual fight. So again, I pose the question, is Crawford overtrained? Did he overtrain for this fight? Did he cut weight too quick and arrive at the weight too quick? Does he have too much weight to lose? Something looks up with his weight cut. And I find it hilarious. When I made these videos, like part 1 of this video, you have old media and the Bud Buddies. They got mad at me as if I was picking on Crawford. But this is my job. This is what I do full time. Make sure you guys subscribe and hit the bell notification icon so you don't miss a thing. I've been doing this over a decade, covering boxing full time on YouTube, giving you guys the latest and greatest. I'm the best in the business. So when I do these videos, it's nothing personal. It's always business. I'm telling you what I see in the observation. Look at Crawford. This is him at his media day. He was sweating for his media day. He never removed his shirt and he went for a long time. So I'm like, does he still have weight to lose? It seemed like he had never been at this moment. And I don't think he's ever had a fight even remotely close to this big. So maybe he was putting in so much work, he overtrained. And I'm not saying this to make excuses. May the best man win on Saturday. But I am saying something looks very wrong with Terence Crawford's weight cut ahead of this Spence fight, right? Why is he doing a media day for an hour and 15 minutes plus? Errol Spence got in and got out, did a 30-minute workout. And that makes more sense to me because what fighter wants to work out, not just work out, but work out for the media for over an hour when they still got to make their weight cut? They could just be chilling and, you know, making and spending time with their family. The professional 12-round fight is 36 minutes. So it was almost like Crawford was trying to prove a point by going longer and showing like, hey, look at me. So again, I'm curious, did he overtrain and overcommit and get to the weight soon? Or did he have weight to shed because he bulked up? Something looks up, and I'm gonna keep saying that. And the funny thing is, when I was making part 1 of this video, I had all the videos did great. So appreciate you for the support. Ton of people just understood where I was coming from and why I was saying what I was saying in those videos. But there was a small section of boxing fans and they wanted to go tit for tat. They felt I should be saying negative things about Errol Spence's weight cut because of how I'm looking at Terence Crawford's weight cut. But they're two different fighters. They had two different camps. And I'm not going to pick on Errol Spence's weight cut if I'm not seeing the same things. People in boxing always go for the low-hanging fruit. They see Errol Spence just getting smaller and naturally his face is thinning out and stuff like that. So they're just automatically assuming that he's super weight drained. But again, as I told you in part 2, he's dropped more weight in a smaller amount of time before the Porter fight and the Mikey Garcia fight. So I wasn't worried about the bigger guy who, as he cuts weight, it's a little bit noticeable because, again, I've seen Errol Spence personally, stood next to him and stuff in his offseason, and he used to start his camps much, much bigger. Meanwhile, back to Terence Crawford. I have never seen Terence Crawford ahead of his fight, like the week of his fight, look in the manner that I'm seeing, that I showed you, and I will show you again in this video. And again, it's funny, the Bud Buddies, they want everything to be even. They want me to say something that I don't see and I don't observe with Errol Spence's weight cut because I have a critique or an observation regarding Terence Crawford's weight cut. But I'm sorry, not sorry. In the real world, that's not how life works. I'm not gonna say something negative that I don't see or that I'm not worried about because you want me to. Because again, when I prepare these videos, they are strategic, they are meticulous, they are researched. I don't just get on YouTube and just start bumping my gums Everything is direct. It's just like Floyd Mayweather. There's no wasteful punches. I don't have wasteful videos where I'm talking to hear myself talk. So if I say something, it's because there's some substance or at least an observation that I've made that leads me to this. So again, there's a reason why I wasn't really concerned with Errol's weight cut, because to me, it looks like one of his smoothest weight cuts. He's gradually tapering down to the weight class. Now let's take a look at Terence Crawford again. This is Terence Crawford from the final press conference. So put your emotions to the side and please let me know when you've seen Terence Crawford look this like almost raggedy or tattered, almost beat up ahead of his fight on fight week. So that's another reason why it's alarming when it comes to Terence Crawford, because I've covered several Crawford fights live in the flesh, and I've watched his whole career, watched every single fight he's had at welterweight, and I've done my research. I do not recall a time or a point in time where Crawford was looking like this. And look at his eyes. Bags around his eyes. And when you are dehydrated, how not drinking enough water impacts your eyes. So when you're a fighter cutting weight, it says when the body is not adequately hydrated, your eyes will suffer. It can lead to diarrhea, irregular bowel movements, dry eyes, blurred vision, etc., because the body is trying to retain the little bit of water that it has left. And in severe dehydration, it says it can lead to shock. You could be confused, lethargic, low energy, yada, yada, yada. Look at Crawford and look at him at the grand arrivals. His tone was low, bags under his eyes, face looks sunken in, his hair looks kind of tattered. You know, that could maybe just be because he's growing it out. His cheekbones, high cheekbones. I mean, this is him literally after the final press conference. And when I made this video, and he got scar tissue over his eye, you see the bags under his eyes, as I mentioned earlier, and the cheekbone looked more prominent. You know, his hair looks spotty. He just looks, him with Errol Spence staring him down. He just looks almost like a homeless person. Like if you've seen Crawford on the subway, there's no way you would look at him and be like, oh, that's a multimillionaire, world-class champion fighter from Omaha. So I stand on what I said before in the previous segments and editions of this special edition Spence Crawford Ego Weight Watchers. This weight cut looks like it is really, a tough one for Terence Crawford. And again, I don't just talk. I research. I study this game. This is Terence Crawford a few years ago. Look at his face, the final press conference for his fight with Mean Machine in New York. Does that look the same as what I just showed you? The final press conference for the Errol Spence mega fight? Absolutely not. Now, I know how the Bud Buddies think. They're going to say, oh, that's just because he's a little bit older, because the Mean Machine fight was in 2019. It was a couple years ago. That's the only difference. But I reject that because Floyd Mayweather fought Canelo, and Floyd Mayweather was whatever age Crawford is, about 36. That's how old he was when Floyd Mayweather fought Canelo, but Mayweather fought at 152 and didn't look drained. So he had to move up in weight, and he was still the same age as Crawford, and his face didn't look like this. He didn't look drained because he wasn't trying to bulk up to be bigger than Canelo Alvarez. But back to Terence Crawford. Let's look at Terence Crawford's very last fight against David Avocado. So this is Terence Crawford, and you look at his face versus David Avanesian at the final press conference, just like we looked at the Errol Spence final press conference, and it doesn't look the same. His face looks full. He looks like he's arriving at the weight good. Look at his face. Does his face look all sunk in? This is the final press conference for his very last fight that just took place in December of 2022. Now we're in 2023, and you see on the left, that's how he's showing up to this Errol Spence fight versus the final press conference for the David Avanesian fight. You can't tell me he looks in the same condition. So when your boy Ego makes an observation, it seems like it would benefit you all to just hear me out and listen. So I said what I said about the whole Terence Crawford situation regarding his weight. This looks like a rough weight cut. If you can't see this with your own eyes, then I really don't know what to tell you. I'm trying to do my best job. And this picture, this is not Photoshop. It's just not under the Showtime lights where they have the glamorous bright lights. So people didn't really look at it. But when the boxing reporters get up and close and personal, that's when you can really start to see it. The Showtime cameras are probably zoomed in from way far out. And again, you got these big studio lights as they're conducting the press conference. But you can see from these close-up images of Terence Crawford, it looks like this weight cut is a bit harsh and a bit of a struggle. And specifically for Crawford, I don't ever remember him entering a fight week in this type of shape. So because this is the biggest fight of his life, people are complaining about his resume, saying it's lacking, saying Errol Spence is a huge southpaw threat that's bigger than you. Maybe he burned himself out or overtrained or got to the weight too quick or is overweight and he has to drop a bunch of pounds late. But something looks off, comparatively speaking. And I've watched almost all of Crawford's fights for the last several years since the HBO days. So you guys let me know what it is. Since the last video I dropped, some of you tried to play games and act like you couldn't see. You're like, oh, Crawford looks fine. I'm showing you real-time examples. This is him on fight week. Now he has a chance to make weight. You know, by the time this video comes out, it'll be before the weigh-in. We have to see. I think they're doing a early weigh-in and then they're doing the customary weigh-in later. So you won't really get to see the fighters truly on the scale. You'll see them after they've already made the morning weight, if they make the morning weight. So we'll have to see how that plays out. But for me, Crawford is looking rough. He's looking rough, like this weight cut is really a bother and it's really, you know, taking its toll. And again, it's surprising because I don't ever remember Crawford entering a fight looking like this, you know? So maybe he stressed himself out because the opponent, and Errol Spence is considered a boogeyman in the welterweight division. It's a contemporary rival. He's never been involved in a promotion this big. This is a rivalry. He said he's wanted to fight Errol Spence for several years, but it is pretty shocking when the guy who moved up more weight classes looks like he's having a rougher weight cut. He's been at this division for 5 years. You see him right there with Mean Machine on weigh-in day, and he looks perfectly fine because I don't think he had that big of a build. So weight cutting was easy, but you see him a day before the weigh-in with Errol, and his face looks like a skeleton, like the Crypt Keeper. And I truly believe it's because he knew he was fighting Errol Spence Jr., a big, strong, dangerous rival who's a southpaw. So he put in a lot of work training or something. And also they try to bulk him up, which is, like I keep saying, is what Wilder did versus Fury in the third fight. Adding muscle because your opponent was bigger, right? And that's never really the way to go, because you don't follow your foe. You don't follow your opponent. And because they did something, that means you have to do it. So we'll see how Crawford looks on the scale. We'll see how he does, you know, when he rehydrates. But so far, it looks like this is a really rough, and a far cry from any other weigh-in that I've seen from a Crawford ahead of his biggest fight. So your boy Ego, I am of the belief, as you see from several pictures throughout this video and pictures like this, Crawford being a guy who moved up in weight and he packed on all this size, I don't know that that was the right game plan, because many of the predictions that I heard, they're saying Crawford is faster than Errol Spence and he's going to use his footwork and dynamic switch hitting and these types of things. The more you bulk up and the more weight that you start out with for your starting point, especially if you're not used to it, that could slow you down in the fight. You could lose speed. You can get to a point in the second half of the fight, if it makes it the second half of the fight, where you feel flat, where you feel tired. You know, Crawford, this is another picture. I think he focused so much on like bulking up, hulking up. I was making videos about it and almost looking the part that it could potentially have come back to bite him, in the fact that everybody said his biggest strength over Errol Spence is switch hitting and athleticism. So why would you even potentially stagnate your athleticism or stifle it by bulking up and looking bigger than I've ever seen you look before, only to have to lose all the weight in a training camp to fight Errol Spence and make the weight on the scale? I don't think that, we'll see how he does on the rehydration clause, but for me, that's too much risk and it's not worth it. I'm not a big fan of fighters experimenting with new things ahead of the biggest fight of their life, right? If you've never started your camp this big, as you see in the picture, I don't think a major fight with Errol Spence, being on PBC, a new network, first time fighting with premier boxing champs in PBC, a long-awaited fight, I don't think that would be something you would want to explore and kind of experiment with and try something new out. And to me right here, if you guys can tell me any other previous Crawford fight where he started his camp and he looked this big and this massy, then I would love to know so I can do some further research. But I know you can't, because there's never really been a time where he's done that. The other thing is age. Terence Crawford is 36 years old, and if you're not moving up in weight, there's really no reason to bulk up in this manner. I can tell by his face that he's at a higher weight class than he was when he fought Hank Lundy. His face looked way more slender in the past. So we'll see how this plays out for Terence Crawford on the scale when we get the actual weigh-in. But interesting move for him to start off heavier than career heavy, I would say, for his career, for the biggest fight of his life. You know, this is him when he first got to Vegas, and it's a far cry from what I just showed you at the beginning of this video, him on actual fight week. So we'll see. If Terence Crawford steps on the scale and he's drastically under the weight, or if he misses, if he misses weight, that's just common sense. That's not a good thing. But even if he's a lot under 147, that's going to be very strange, I will say. And again, I'm not a big fan of experimenting with your weight and stuff like that before a big fight. That's why he was wearing a black hoodie in Las Vegas in the desert, and it was 113 degree weather, and he shows up with a t-shirt and a Nike tracksuit with the hoodie on, kept the hoodie on the whole time. So either he didn't want to show people his body because it looks frail and he arrived at the weight too soon, or maybe he was still trying to wear bulky clothes or wear black, which attracts heat, and keep the hoodie on because he still had weight to cut. I don't know. I'm not in his camp. All I know is I never recall seeing Crawford look tattered, just look worn and all this stuff right before a big fight. So before the Bud Buddies come in and say, Errol, what about Errol? Let me know where Crawford looked sucked up like this before a major fight, because I truthfully don't recall a time where he looks practically homeless ahead of a big fight. And the other thing is, he just fought in December and he's the smaller guy. So I really don't see any reason why he should look like this. But then you look at Terence Crawford. He went over to BLT Prime and fought against David Avanesian. Reportedly, he got this crazy salary, and he was also in the movie Creed. And I watched the movie, and to me, Crawford also looked bulkier and bigger than I could recall him seeing in that particular movie, even though he had a short part and not many scenes. So interesting move. Now he has to cut all the weight to fight a monster like Errol Spence Jr. I will be paying exclusive and special attention to that scale as they step on the scale, and I need to see how much they weigh, because to me, it just looks like Crawford's weight cut is very rough. Ego Weight Watchers / We Unpack. Let me know what you guys think. Drop your thoughts in the comment section. If you found value in this video, there's multiple ways to support the channel. Subscribe to the channel. There's super thanks. Tell a friend, share the video, subscribe, like, comment, all that good stuff. And I'm out. Introducing Super Thanks. Right here on the official Boxingego YouTube. Super Thanks allows you, the viewers, to show a little bit of extra gratitude, which enables me as a full-time content creator to push out the content you need in the world of boxing. Underneath all the videos, you will see a heart with the $sign in it. You can enter any amount that you find suitable as a super thanks. A brand new interactive and colorful way to get your comments highlighted and noticed by not only myself, but other people on the YouTube platform. Super thanks, a unique and cool way to show and applaud us full-time content creators. Hopefully you guys enjoy the content. Super thanks. The future is now. The Hibernation 5s by Kenichi Bear. Hybrid gaming and lifestyle headphones. Out of the box, you can connect to any console or PC. Bluetooth ready with a low latency USB adapter, color RGB, and extreme bass mode. The Hibernation 5s adjust to you. Whether you need a gaming, travel, gym, or lifestyle headphones, the Hibernations got you covered. The new Hibernation 5s, link in the description. Customize the way you hear the world. Welcome to the nation. Are you tired of your YouTube videos not getting any views? Well, consider TubeBuddy. I've used TubeBuddy for years to scale up my YouTube channel. Now we're sitting over 200,000 subscribers. TubeBuddy is a browser extension that offers a ton of built-in productivity and time-saving services to take your channel to the next level. Use my link in the description to get started with TubeBuddy and level up your channel faster. We working.